Tell you what.
All right. Well, what's going on, Lucas? Another
Not much.
episode, another week.
Another episode, another week. You want to know what I loved about the last few episodes that we started 2025 off with?
Retic focused.
Retake focus, but not just that. I like your little all right.
Have I been doing that every episode?
Yeah, every episode.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
let's
we started.
Keep it rolling.
Welcome to episode 124 of the Retic Lounge. For those of you that are tuning in for the first time, don't forget to hit that notification bell. And thank you for listening. We got an awesome episode today. This is kind of one that we squeezed in last minute, kind of unprepped, but think it's going to be a good interview. Alex Carr is a brand new retic keeper. He's been keeping them for, I don't know, we'll find out, but not too long. And we're going to be talking about like troubleshooting retic behavior. I guess Alex's like main concern is like having a young retic that's defensive and it growing into an animal that just is like difficult to work with. I don't think when anybody gets into retics that for the first time, they want like that, you know, that first animal to just end up being like a 10, 12, 14 foot snake. That's not fun to handle.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't we kind of cover something similar with another retic owner like a year and a half ago?
Yeah. A while back, we talked about, I think it was a reverse interview, where we talked a lot about behaviors, right? But I thought this would make a really good episode because there's been a lot of advice that he's been given, a lot of things that have worked, a lot of things that haven't worked. And we'll get an update on where the retic's behavior is now, and we'll let him kind of explain that whole thing. But Alex,
well, I think this episode's a cool insight into our Discord, our Patreon as well.
Yeah.
Like we are only doing this episode because of conversations that spawned up on Discord.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah, just a good community over there helping people out. So just a reminder, if you want to join with a little bit more retic access, a little bit of peer-to-peer discussion, I think we have a good one. So patreon.com/the Retic Lounge.
Yeah. No, it's going to be a fun one. And it's only $5 a month, by the way, for Patreon. But before we jump in, we bring Alex on. I do not want to forget one of our awesome sponsors, Cold-Blooded Cafe. I actually just got another. I feel like every episode I'm like, I put in another order, but literally that's how quickly I'm going through food.
With your collection size, that's how you have to do it.
It's fun. This was a little baby order, and even with the perks of being a sponsor of the show, it was still just way too many feeders. I got chicks. I need to get chicks. But anyways,
Chris, I'll be hitting you up.
Yeah. So code Reptile Lounge 20 for 20% off on your first order. Hit them up. They literally have the cleanest, the best rodents in the entire industry. You can't go wrong with supporting Cold-Blooded Cafe. They also house all of their rodents. All of the supply that you are getting, everything is in-house from the U.S. You're not getting any shipments from China or anywhere overseas. So, reach out to them and use our code Reptile Lounge 20.
Lucas, before we jump on, I did something this week that I've been procrastinating for years. I put the Nate in procrastinate, so it's no surprise. But I've always just kind of loosely written my animal notes, right? Like there's sometimes I miss it, but I have like a very loose record of all my feedings and all the stuff that I feel noteworthy in the room. I started transferring it over digitally. I feel like a grandpa. Just spreadsheets on my computer.
Okay, cool.
But it's so much cleaner, so much more satisfying to just see it that way.
Still, all of my feedings is on the notes section of my phone, and I can scroll through to like 2020.
That would stress me out.
And So every single day I go through, I write who I'm feeding and I write their name on the list and I put what they ate. And it's a terrible way to go about doing it. That's for sure.
But yeah,
I tried exporting everything onto what was it, Husbandry Pro, and
I've tried that a time or two.
I got tired of like transferring things over, and I was so like burnt out of transferring things over and like adding, when you have a shit ton of snakes and you have babies as well that like you're trying to sell. I got so burnt out inputting the information of my animals that I didn't even like start recording the new stuff in there, so I just dropped it.
Yeah, I had a similar experience, and my collection is much slimmer. So just with localities and stuff, all that information inputting and through your phone, I was just like, I'm
it's a lot.
kind of over it. And
it's a lot.
I think I forgot the app was on there too. So like, I would just neglect it even more.
Then if you don't sign in X amount of times, you got to go in. Like it's booted me out of the app a bunch of times, and like it was one of those accounts that like I didn't have like a serious like I couldn't remember my password. So every single time I was going back in,
your phone does that for you.
Oh man, it's driving me crazy. But yeah. So anyways, I'm trying to think if I have any other updates of things that are happening in here. We talked about the clutch that dropped last week, but outside of that, I got nothing. You want to bring Alex on?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Whether you've poured your heart and soul into your reptile business or you've just begun your business journey, AE Foundry has you covered with next level expertise in graphic design, motion graphics, videography, photography, and so much more. If you've been dying for a new logo for your reptile business, motion graphics for your current logo, a new website, or need assistance making your video podcast come to life, then listen carefully. AE Foundry's mission places storytelling at its core. AE Foundry believes that a distinctive story and background are the driving forces that set your brand apart. In today's market, consumers seek more than just products. They crave a connection built on trust with the brands they cherish. AE Foundry is committed to empowering small businesses and fostering authenticity that resonates with their consumers. Reach out to them and let them help you craft a visual narrative that helps establish a genuine and lasting connection with your audience. To contact AE Foundry, email them at aromero@aefoundry.com or on Instagram at AE Foundry. When it comes to housing your retics, trust me, you're going to want an enclosure that will be just as strong and durable as your reticulated python. The Heartland Reptile enclosure is next level tough and will outlive you and your retic by several generations. Heartland Reptile enclosures are designed and manufactured out of powder-coated aluminum to provide the highest quality and longevity available in the reptile enclosure. What makes them even better is they are lighter than your PVC and plastic enclosures out there and are extremely tough. Stop playing around with plastic enclosures for your large constrictors and step up your enclosure game with the Heartland Reptile enclosure. To inquire about one of these enclosures, speak to Jordan himself at Heartland Reptiles on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. Here on TRL, we preach about the importance of using hooks, feeding tongs, and other tools with your reticulated python all the time. Animal Equipment by Stoney not only has all the tools you need for any snake you keep, but they have the absolute best hooks on the market. What sets Animal Equipment by Stoney's hooks apart from the other guys is their polycarbonate hook ends that provide a warm feel that won't disturb or bother your retic, ensuring a positive interaction from the get-go. Since 2008, AE Stoney has been supplying zoos, herpetologists, and other animal professionals with their tools. It's time for you to step your hook game up and buy an AE Stoney hook. To learn more and purchase one of their amazing products, visit aestoney.com.
What's up, guys?
What's going on?
Not much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you, man.
Yeah.
I think you spent the least amount of time in the Patreon and got an episode. Like with the least amount of time compared to like everyone else who we've brought on.
Yeah, when I got the message, I was like, is he messaging the right guy? Like, did he mean to message me?
I know there's a couple Alexes here, but...
Yeah. There's at least one other one I can think of.
Well, what I think is valuable about like what we're going to be talking about today is it really caters to the pet keepers, right? And the people that are getting into this for the first time, and I think that that's where a lot of like growth in the hobby needs to be focused on. Because we can geek out about morphs and clutches and breeding and all that fun stuff, but we got to talk about the stuff that people are worried about when it comes to getting reticulated pythons, which is, behavioral issues, defensive behavior, flighty behavior, bitey behavior, however you want to label it, right?
Yeah.
So, Alex, if you don't mind, for our listeners, can you kind of go into like your history with keeping reptiles, what reptiles you kept before jumping into retics, and then like when you jumped into retics, like just kind of take us through that whole experience, a timeline.
Yeah. I absolutely had a fascination with snakes as a kid. Loved catching them. I was never allowed to have any. So my parents were like, you can't have any snakes, but you can have lizards. So I think I started with like a water dragon and a mountain horn dragon.
Holy shit.
And
So
now like
a little outside the norm.
A little outside the norm.
Yeah, like looking at it now, I was like, that was not intentional at all. And then I've kept bearded dragons, and a few years ago started ball pythons, and then it's just naturally evolved into I wanted something a little bit more challenging. Had looked up stuff on YouTube and kind of ran across the super dwarf. Big snake personality and a little bit of a smaller body, not small body, but it's definitely been a challenge, but eye-opening, and how they're portrayed, but a good challenge.
What ball pythons do you have right now?
I have 8 ball pythons. Most are genetic stripe, clown, and then a little bit of exanthic.
Cool. What line of exanthic?
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
VPI.
Nice.
Yeah.
I forget whose table is it, Nathan. Every NARBC that we go to in Dallas or that was in Arlington, there's always that one booth that has all of the exanthic ball pythons and like,
they're in those really clean displays. I know who you're talking about, but
they're always next to Bob's balls.
I was going to say, I feel like it's always near Bob's balls, but I know it's not Bob.
It's always right adjacent to it. Their tables touch, but I forget.
And I hate to say it, but I'm partial to the TSK line, but that's, I think, just a little bit of hometown pride.
Probably.
Yeah.
Their displays, like every single snake in there looks like black and white. Like
yeah.
Exactly.
Like there's no other color, basically. I can't think I've seen it, but I can't think of who that is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wish I knew because I'd give them a shout out. I love their displays. Their animals are great. But so when you got into the ball pythons, did you have a plan to breed them?
At first, no. It was more,
okay.
I just wanted a pet snake. I'd never had a pet snake. Like I had caught snakes, kept them for a little while, and then released them back into the wild. But that was just in my research.
And then,
yeah. Just in the research, I thought that would be a good starting place. And then it kind of naturally progressed into I thought I might want to breed. Really had no plan, and then realized that if I was going to do that, I probably needed one. And then that it's just naturally, there were other snakes, there were other species that I wanted to get into, but I jumped from there just straight into retics, just with my fascination of them.
Any other reptiles hanging around, or
a bearded dragon, Spyro? He's a pretty lazy dude. I'm looking into northern pine snakes.
Okay.
I would like to get into those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other lizards on the list? Any other any other reptile species?
I think my parents probably burnt me out on lizards. I think that was just kind of like I wanted the snakes so bad.
That's fair.
That now I have discontent for lizards. So
we always want what we can't have. So
yeah,
exactly.
No hate.
Speaking of like northern pine snakes and stuff, I have the Pituophis. I have the bull snakes here, and they are a phenomenal species to work with.
That's what I've heard.
They are so awesome. And I've never been a colubrid person ever. Like I've not been but here over the last 6 months, colubrids are I'm starting to like them more and more now that I have some bull snakes. they've opened up my eyes to the whole colubrid game.
Carpets too. Carpets have been on
Carpets
the
are great.
list of things. That's been on the list. Not sure what direction to go with carpets, but that's been on the list too.
The dangerous thing about carpets is they're a manageable size and they're cheap, so you can get a lot really fast.
Yeah, that's what's kept me from more retics at this point.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
So before we even jump into the behavior stuff and you give us a rundown of like what you've been experiencing and how you stumbled across like different advice and stuff, I'm curious, like, what information were you looking, like what information did you find on your research, and like what were you like listening to, and at what point did you feel like confident? Like what did you hear? What did you take in for you to be like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm buying my first retic.
If I'm honest, a lot of what I looked into was reach out reptiles. I'd faithfully watch their YouTube for months on end. And I honestly didn't think that it was a realistic thing for me. I thought that I would never be a retic guy. Like I just thought that was just not going to be, I was never going to put myself in that position. But over time and research and talking to Joe and stuff like that, I don't remember specifically what I was citing at the time. I think I kind of took everything that I saw in Reach Out and took it as gospel. But I had seen things online and I had kind of heard things from others in other group chats that I'm involved in at how difficult retics could be. So I was determined that if I got one, he or she would be extremely well socialized. And I thought that would, kind of fix whatever problems that they had. And then, obviously get one and you realize that they're a lot more complex than that.
Yeah.
They're much smarter than they're given credit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What was like when you were at the time frame of like, this is a pipe dream, I'm never going to get, like, I'm not going to be a retic guy, like you said. What was it about them that you kind of, that led you on to that like belief?
Belief is in like I wanted one, or belief is in like I
you weren't that you weren't going to be a retic guy. Like I'm curious, like what were the doubts in your mind? What was going through? Like what were you seeing or hearing, or like why did you feel that it wasn't going to be something that you were interested in, or not interested, but something that you wouldn't attain?
The only retics that I had ever seen were like at reptile shows. I had never really been around a retic until owning one. So I'd been around them at shows and they were, I don't want to say most of them were, I don't want to say that they were irresponsible or anything like that, but they were kept kind of in smaller totes and with low prices, and they were big animals.
Mm-hmm.
And they would tell you like, oh, they're fine once they're out. Once they're out, they're good, but like it's getting them out that's the problem. And I was like, you know what, I don't think I want to put myself in that position.
No, that's fair.
So, and you hear horror stories of I guess with no information, you hear horror stories and you kind of take it for what it is and you don't really consider the source. And so I think it just kind of fear mongers what they are. Misunderstood.
I mean, misunderstood. And yeah, I mean, I can imagine the thought of you end up having a 10+ foot animal. It's, to hear like, oh, once you take them out, then they're okay. And it's like, well, yeah, taking out a large constrictor, if that's not okay, like that's pretty scary.
Well, and yeah, once they become big, it's not as easy as just grabbing your snake.
Yeah. And that was, I think that was probably what hooked me is what got me was the fact that there were these super dwarfs, and at the time I probably thought, super dwarf was an actual thing when I started researching, but then you figure out it's more of a locality base. It seemed more manageable. And then I'd heard and read things maybe through Reddit that it's a lot easier to when they're babies and then you grow with them, as opposed to getting one that's already an adult. And you just got to figure it out.
I'm a firm believer of if you have like decent reptile knowledge, you've maybe owned a snake or two, they're a perfect snake to grow with. Like, I think most people, as long as they care about the animals, can really grow with a retic.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Especially a super dwarf.
I even take it a step further. Like, even if you don't have snake experience, but like a retic is the only snake that you're interested in, it's still something that is very manageable if you start off with a hatchling or young juvenile, and just grow with it. I mean, that's what I did. I mean, I was out of snakes. Everything that I had kept, all of the snakes that I had kept were just like, I was a kid into my teenage years, and then I went like a 6-7 year gap without any snakes, and I jumped in with retics. And that's when, like, that was my first experience of like dialed in husbandry, thermostat, like everything, like doing it the way that we all learn how to do it now. Because before, when I was a teen and everything, I mean, you're putting a sticky heat pad underneath, and pet store didn't tell you to get a thermostat. So I definitely think that retics, if you start at a young age, they're a great snake to grow with. You just definitely need to know what you're getting into before you get it.
Yeah, I think that I knew what I was getting into. I think probably the part that I didn't really consider was that not every animal was going to be the animal that was presented on YouTube or online, and that was extremely social and would be extremely active. And
there's a reason why people like to show those ones.
Yeah, because then you end up with one, like Apollo, who is not like that at all. Is actually very much respects his own space. But we're getting through that. If I can ask both of you, at what point were retics a thing for you? When did that kind of come into play?
2018 for me is when I got my first retic, but I had been researching them since 2012. 2012 is when I ran into the first post of a honey island, which is now known as Madu. It was on a UK snake forum, and I saw that retics could stay smaller. At the time, I was seeing that these Madus were adult size, 8 to 10 feet, and I was like, okay, this is better than 16 to 20. And just continued down that rabbit hole literally for 6 years.
Wow.
And then I finally got out of baseball, sports, everything that I was doing, and
it was injury that took you out of baseball, right?
No, my injury happened my senior year of high school. I played 4 years on a freaking broken ass knee, wobbling around, but I managed.
All right. Yeah, I guess for me, let's see, I got back into reptiles around 2011, 2012. Just got a couple ball pythons, and actually the guy who gave me them led me to Brian Barczyk. He got a berm, and he was always talking about getting a retic, but kind of gave me the fear-mongering like explanation of what a retic is. So I was always trying to talk him out of it. So when I saw him at reptile shows, I was like, oh, hell no, I can't believe people are selling those. And then
keep going. Yeah. I'll ask the question after.
I know where I'm at.
I was going to say, do we think that the whole fear-mongering explanation of retics for people that own them, do we think it's an ego thing? Do they like to feel better because they're like, oh, they're these big aggressive animals? And
I mean, we've all had our experiences with retics where there's always a bit of truth to some of the stuff that's said about them, right? So, but I wouldn't classify them as that all the time. No.
Yeah.
But then, so I think I started hearing about super dwarfs like here and there from Brian Barczyk, and had just been watching the videos on his channel for a while, saw some of his retics and just thought they were cool. So I was like, yeah, well, if there's a small package of that, why not check them out? And then I just had a buddy, Richard Bilbo and Aspen Mahan, who showed up at a community event where there was just like a bunch of big snakes being presented to people in the community. It was for people to learn about larger constrictors. So I got to hold a couple there. Richard got to kind of explain to me what he was working with, the size of the animals, and it just gave me a bit more confidence that I wanted to work with them. But that was I got my first retic in 2016.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so 2 years before I did.
We also want to thank VivTech Products for being an affiliate sponsor of the Retic Lounge. Stop by VivTech Products for the best UV spectrum lighting on the market that will enhance and improve your snake's overall well-being and health. Visit vivtechproducts.com and use the code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off. Again, visit vivtechproducts.com and use our affiliate code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off. Looking for the perfect accessories for your hatchlings or juvenile retics? Look no further than Heli Guy Serpents. Our sponsor, Chris Sexton, is coming in hot with an amazing 3D printer, creating top-notch perches and other caging accessories for your beloved pets. Enrich your retics environment with their high-quality products. Use our promo code TRL10 for a 10% discount on your purchase. Visit them today at heliguyserpents.com and start giving your pets the best. Heli Guy Serpents, the premier source for 3D printed caging accessories. Again, that's www.heliguyserpents.com and use our promo code TRL10 for 10% off all of your 3D printed accessories today.
But yeah, I mean, just different journeys. It sounds like you and I both started kind of just that fascination began around that time frame, same time frame, 2011, 2012. And then, yeah, you beat me to the punch by 2 years on getting one, which good for you, man, because
hey, you didn't have Richard Bilbo kind of egging you on, though.
Oh, man, I would.
He shows up with a nice lavender dwarf at the reptile show and just puts it in your hands for 20 minutes. Sorry, but you're going to be getting the
I bet.
dwarf or super dwarf retic
I feel like
soon.
if Richard Bilbo would have got me with anything, it would have been those emeralds that he keeps.
Oh, he just had one of them pass, and it's so sad. Yeah, those emeralds are incredible.
He handled those things, and this was back. I would see him doing this when people would say that they were just defensive animals and had these massive long teeth, and then he's holding these emeralds like they're puppy dogs.
No, I mean that same day with the large constrictor party, he had one of his emeralds out with him, Elmer. And he was just rubbing him on the nose and like getting up next to him. He's cool. And then when I went out over to his house, all the emerald enclosures, he would open up, start petting him on the face. No like introduction at all. And
that's awesome.
He's different with his animals, and it's inspiring.
There's a handful of people in each generation of like keepers that I think have that gift, and Richard's one of them. Yeah, I mean, so that's when Nathan and I got into retics.
Wow. So what's the number for you guys? Like total number of retics?
I have 10 right now.
10?
Yep. 4 of those are yearlings. The rest are in the larger enclosures behind me.
Do you want to know how many I have with babies for sale?
Yes. Or like the total number, Lucas.
Yeah. Total number of retics. Okay, there's 27 just from last clutch. Plus,
do you need me to keep count here?
If you want to, 27 last clutch, plus about I have an excess from like previous clutches in 24, and then I think I have 2 or 3 animals from 2023.
Wait, how many from the other one?
No. So I'm giving you a total. There's probably about 14 other animals that I have available from 23 and 24 total.
Okay.
Or maybe not available, but that are in my garage. I do have some animals that are sold that I'm waiting to send out.
Just in your garage.
Yeah, so that's just with like 2023 to 2024, 25 babies.
Okay.
And I got a clutch of 24 in the incubator, but we won't count those.
Yeah, we don't count eggs before they hatch, but that's soon to be added to your number.
Yeah, and then I have probably about anywhere between 26 and 32 animals that I've held back or that are breeders.
I'm counting it as 32.
Yeah, that's probably a safer bet.
So you have about 73. In 3 months, you're going to have about 100 retics in your garage.
Yep. Yeah, I think the most that I've had at one point was 101.
Man,
That's my reaction too, Alex.
I have 2 employees.
I'm just still thinking like,
yeah. I mean, I don't even.
I mean,
Don't judge me.
No, there's no judgment. Like if I could do that, if that was the thing for me, oh man.
And on the bright side, I'm not keeping like 3-year-old animals that literally take up half a CB70 in a tub. All of my animals, respectively, have decent size enclosures compared to the industry standard.
Yeah, absolutely. I just couldn't, like, I have 2 now, and then I saw when you posted the Soleatoas,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of felt like the SpongeBob meme, like I need it.
Yeah.
And so I think you posted after that the prices, and I was like, I need to sit the phone down and go somewhere. Like I need to go figure something out for a little while.
And Patreon gets a discount too, man.
Yeah, I was like, I need to go on somewhere and go figure out, read a book or take a walk or something. Forget this ever happened. Let the ADHD take hold.
I'll send me your address. I'll just send you one, and we'll talk about the cost later.
oh my God, Lucas is the worst.
Dude, these snakes. So this clutch specifically, the Soleatoas, which is by the way the most stupid name, but I'm happy I came up with it. But the Soleatoas, they are all the sweetest little babies. You can pick any of them up without tapping them. There's maybe a couple that'll think it's food because now that they've all eaten, their food response is like little babies are ravenous. But they are all just like pick them up and they just like they want to come right to your face, and they're awesome animals.
Don't tell me that.
They have a special. So every clutch that wild caught female has laid, which is really odd. Every clutch that she has laid, those babies have never been bit by a single one of her babies, which is pretty crazy.
All right, Alex, enough of Lucas's sales pitch. We're here to talk. Talk about your retail.
Yeah, I'm sure at some point I'll hear the sales pitch again because I'll probably mention it again. So it's fine. We can come back to that later.
We'll keep it in our DMs.
Yeah.
But let's so let's back up here, and instead of talking about like right now where you're at, what was going on with the animal that you received that you started getting
how was
worried?
everything from start to here?
Start was fine. It seemed fine because I had no concept of what this was going to be, I guess. And no one was to predict after shipping, what he was going to be like. Handleable, still just kind of freeze, but after a few minutes he would come out of it and it would be fine. Handled him quite a bit, and everything was kosher. But of course he was so little that even at that point, I think he took a couple nips at me, but it was no problem. I chalked that up to, well, this is my fault, I'm probably presenting in the wrong way. I seem like I'm a threat to him right now. And I didn't really take into consideration, that his personality may have been a little bit different, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, he started nipping a little bit and everything, but like, when did it start to become a thing where you started getting concerned? Like, what were you observing?
Honestly, it's kind of ironic. Probably it was right before my little girl was born. So she's almost 4 months, probably about 5 to 6 months ago. It started to become an issue. Most of the time he would come out and it would be okay. But if I set him down somewhere and then tried to go back to him later, it was all bets are off. We have forgotten everything that we just did. It was something about letting him sit down and anchor himself to something that would send him flying at me.
Okay.
And then once we got to a point where I could slowly get to him, pick him back up, he was fine again. And it was no big deal. As long as I was holding him, he wasn't going to go for me. But if he had that anchor, he was going to go for me.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. And I'm just curious. So, like, if you, at that time, or even now, when you're approaching the enclosure and you open it up, oops, sorry, punch my mic, and you open up the enclosure, what are you seeing? Is the snake frozen? Is the snake cocking up in an S shape? Is the snake starting to come towards you? What are you seeing?
Or just stare battle.
Right.
Most of the time, well, honestly, and I guess this is a good segue to that, but since I have taken a lot of tips from people on him and switched some things up, now it's more of a frozen. He's much more frozen, but he's also out a lot more. And it takes him a lot less time to come out of his shell.
Okay.
If he sees me, he'll freeze up, but he's back up a couple months. And if he saw me, he was going to fly. He was going to fly at me.
Okay.
Especially if I stood too close.
Yeah. So the flying, is that like open up and just like coming at you?
Yeah. I mean, he would sit frozen for a minute and just kind of watch me. And then you're trying to read what he's going to do next. And it would just come out of nowhere. It wasn't a food response thing. It wasn't sometimes I could tap him with the hook and everything would be okay. He would just sit there and kind of deal with it. He would respond a little bit. And then in just a couple seconds, it would just be unprovoked. I could have maybe even stepped back a minute and he would come out. One of the things, we have friends that come in the basement, like they'll come down in the basement and hang out. And they're like, your snake scared the absolute bejesus out of me. And I'm like, what did he do? And they're like, we, just walked by just to see where he was. And he just came flying out and tapped the glass. His food response is a little bit odd. It's different. It's
How so?
He almost never, and I mean never, has wanted to take it off tongs. Like ever. He's never wanted to take it from me. He's taken it from me one time.
Whoa.
I've seen that a lot with babies, but yeah, I've never seen that with an established retic.
Interesting.
Yeah. He has just never been that way. I think now we're kind of getting to a point where it's a little bit better, where he's kind of coming out and you can see like the pupils dilated. You can kind of see him coming towards me. He thinks it's food time. And sometimes when I open it up, it's almost like it's not food time. He's getting ready to get me out.
Right. Okay.
But I don't know. It's odd.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and again, going back to kind of the whole purpose of you reaching out for support is this idea that like, hey, I have a defensive retic and I don't want to, like, what do I need to do to mitigate the behavior sooner rather than later before he can do some damage? So I know before you became a Patreon member, you reached out to me a couple times. We talked a bit.
Yeah.
And then you joined our Patreon. Our Patreon members chimed in and everything. But if you can you break down like a list of the different things that you were told and you tried and whether they worked or they didn't work? I know that I'm asking you to kind of go into the memory bank, but
I want to pause you on that too. I just have one question about like some of the information you've already given us, because I haven't really dived as deep into the situation.
Okay.
When he was coming out of the cage and like coming like out, you say, was he acting spastic or was he acting confident?
Oh, spastic.
Okay.
For sure.
did he
Go ahead.
go for it?
No, he's always been, he's never really had a whole lot of confidence about himself. He's just now getting to the point of confidence. I can be out on my own. I can kind of hold my own. I'm okay. I don't need to defend myself all the time. Excuse me.
Right. Another question. So I mean, so spastic in a way, like I guess what I'm thinking Nathan is probably trying to get, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, is like when he was out, was he doing
Oh,
this one?
oh,
Like
Yeah.
was
oh,
he
I'm sorry.
yeah, was he
Yeah, like
doing this
whole
one?
body flailing, like,
Oh,
or was he
Like
sitting in place? Like,
yeah.
defensive, I guess. Sometimes they can get into a spaz. Like I've seen it a few times where they just like, they can't think at all. They're just flying
Yeah,
whatever they can
they're
fly.
flying, they're trying to get away, and then there's other situations, and this is what my question was going to be. Does your
oh,
snake
okay.
does your snake just sit there and wrap you tightly and just is
Just
frozen solid?
yeah. My apologies. I thought you meant like him coming out at me when he's in the
Yeah.
cage.
Yeah, no, that's
No.
very spastic. I don't like that.
Yeah. It's he is very much
Or
once he's out.
calculated.
He's very tight and very. His head is right against my hand or right against my arm. Not a whole lot of movement. Very short tongue flicks. After about 20 or so minutes, he'll break a little bit and kind of be like, "Oh, this is cool. This is all right." And then a couple minutes later, he will go, "Nope, it's not. I was
Okay.
wrong.
Interesting.
This is not good."
And
Yeah.
freezes again.
Yeah, it's he'll have moments of clarity where he's like, "Oh, I'm not being hurt. I'm not injured. Nothing's happened." And then it's just like it's like all the alarms and bells go off, and
Right.
he just
Right.
tightens back up again. But it's not any. He has very rarely been spastic once he's out. Very, very
Okay.
rarely.
Yeah, so generally speaking, the freezing means two different things, right? Like one, they're scared they're scared as hell, or two, and this has happened a lot, and I've actually helped recently Gary kind of overcome this, that it happened out of nowhere with the animal. It started wrapping him tightly and like freezing and having its head right against like the hand area. But that's a sign that like they're just like generally hungry all the time, and like they're you'll have snakes where, if you might not be feeding them the like right size meal, you could be in mid handling session and they'll start to wrap and tighten up. And sometimes they bite, sometimes they don't. But something just triggers that food response to kick in. But, it sounds a lot like this could be like it sounds like it's very like just like this frightened experience.
Yeah. If we have done the food route. We have up to the meals quite a bit for him, and the behavior is still kind of stayed the same. I know that their food response is just incredible, and they're an empty black hole that always wants food. But it has stayed fairly consistent no matter what. It has been that way to some degree from day one until now.
Yeah.
There's not been a whole lot of change.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start into like some of the things that you first started trying out. Like what was some advice that like you started taking, and what wasn't working off the bat?
Handling all the time.
Okay.
That was one that I've got a lot of feedback for, like handle every day for, or almost every day for like 15 minutes. So then I would do that. And we would always end on a positive note. He would go back. I would let him go back on his own. They just kind of say, what the advice that was given me was let them do it on their own terms and let them figure it out and, go back on their own, and don't force them back in or grab their tail or whatever. And so tried that for a long time. There was not really a whole lot of help. So I actually reached out at this point to Abby, the curly-haired keeper.
She's excellent.
Dude, fabulous. She is awesome. And she has been just such a wealth of knowledge for me. I could never give her enough thanks, honestly. I tell her all the time that. And she said, well, try keeping him out longer. And I started to notice a little bit of difference in him. Was keeping him out longer, was I was getting better results from him. I believe that I had FaceTimed her. I FaceTimed her one time. He came out and he was an absolute angel, of course, when I was FaceTiming her. Just no problems at all. Like, oh, everything's cool, everything's fine.
You want to know what it is?
What?
Maybe it's not this, but I've done this before, right? Like there's a snake that like is in my garage that I sometimes might be a little nervous with, but if I'm like on a call and people are there and they're watching me and I get this animal out, I almost feel like I approach the cage with more confidence, right? Because I'm on video and I don't want to look a little nervous, and so I approach it confidently, and like the snake is like it. Every interaction prior to that, the snake has been a nightmare, and then when I go to do it, when I'm like acting a little more confident, the snake is completely cool.
So it's funny that you say that, because that's kind of my theory as to how that happened. I was actually kind of running late from work, and I was supposed to call her like almost immediately as I got home. So I'm stripping my uniform off, and I was like, honey, gotta go jump on a FaceTime call real quick. And I was like, buddy, I don't have time for you to fling at me right now. Like, I just need you to come out. And it was just it was a confidence thing. And so a lot of this, I have maybe internalized a little bit and said, you 100% have been nervous with him. You have been cautious with him. Mm-hmm. And that has probably reinforced some of his behavior.
It absolutely did when I ran into some nervous situations with me and my anery. I mean, I had to have days where I just would sit with her enclosure open for me to calm down. Yeah.
Very early in my retic keeping, I had a wild caught animal that I ended up selling because I was just too nervous with that animal. And it's funny because I followed up with Aaron Metcalf like 2 months after he got him from me and said, hey, how's his behavior been? He's like, oh, he's a doll. And I was like, son of a bitch. Like it was me. it was me. I was making him nervous. And that's why, like, I tell people, don't give in to the bullshit of people saying like, oh, don't wear gloves. Don't be a wimp. Don't be this. Like, do whatever you need to. Put a freaking hazmat suit on, as long as you have confidence to like just approach this animal and not be scared of it. Because at the end of the day, I don't care what anybody says. At least for me, fear, being scared, is at the root of like nervousness with some of these animals. Like, we are nervous and anxious that the snake is going to bite us. It's going to wrap us, whatever the case may be. And the minute that we can like take our egos out of the picture and just say, yeah, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little scared. I don't want to ruin this. I don't want to ruin my relationship with the snake. I don't want to get bit because I don't like getting bit. Screw that. It impacts the way that we interact with the animals. And I am a very firm believer that the animals are way more aware of our nervous behavior than we are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's how they've survived in the wild.
Yeah. It got to a point here, especially since my daughter's been born, because that has been kind of an anxiety. I don't want something around here that is going to be just a defensive animal all the time. Mm-hmm. I want him to be comfortable and not absolutely flying out at everybody. But it got to a point where it was a taxing process to deal with him, where I would come home and go, oh, man, he needs to come out. Yep. And this is going to be so bad. And then when he would come out sometimes and it would be fine. And then sometimes he would come out and it would not be. And then I would internalize that and go, what am I doing wrong? Have I screwed this snake up? Like, did I screw him up? And afterwards, I would tell my wife, like, I don't know what to do. Like, maybe this is just not the species for me. Like, maybe I just am in over my head. Reflecting back on that, probably a little dramatic, being that he's getting better. But
no, but I get it. Those are those late night 12 to 1 a.m. thoughts that run through your head.
I would have never in a million years thought, one, that I would own a retic, but second, that one would keep me up at night. Those both simultaneously have been done.
I think we talked about it on our last episode, but wait until you start dreaming about them. You can't escape it.
You can't. It'll start to happen if it hasn't happened already. You want to know what's funny? I had a dream. Sorry to interrupt, but I'll probably forget. But I rarely ever remember like very seldomly. Like I'll maybe remember one dream every month, maybe a couple months. I had a dream the other night that I was out, or that I was out like herping. I don't know who I was with, but we were looking for snakes, and someone saw a rattlesnake and decided to like fling it with their hook, and it bit me in the ball sack. And I remember freaking out about like, did I get envenomated? Did I not? I was looking at my ball sack trying to look for bite marks.
Was it one? So it wasn't like one of those falling dreams where you hit the ground and wake up.
No. I was just scared.
You stayed asleep after that. That's,
yeah,
that's impressive.
I stayed asleep, and then eventually, I don't know what happened. I didn't reach an end of the dream. I think I just remembered like, I think in my dream I was saying like, I don't see blood coming out of my balls right now, so I think I'm good.
What if we become?
What have we become? But anyways, Alex, have you had any dreams about your retics?
I honestly probably I can't recall one like right off the top of my head. If it was Athena, it was a good dream because she's happy all the time.
Okay.
She's cool with everybody and everything. If it was Apollo, it was probably a stressed out dream. So if that says anything.
Okay, so let's I guess I'm curious. What is it like with Athena?
I am so happy that I got her. She has done probably more for me understanding him than anything anybody has taught me, probably. Because just the way that she acts is so polar opposite of him. And being able to see her behavior as opposed to him and how she reacts to things has given me insight. Like it's almost experienced by population, like seeing more has done more.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people all the time, I don't care if you've kept retics for 20 years, but in that 20-year span, if you've only had 2 retics, someone who has 30 for 2 years has more experience.
Yeah.
Because there are you learn a lot from the individuality of each animal. And take what you are doing correctly with Athena and try your best to apply it with Apollo. I will say this. I've had my share of many defensive animals over the course of the last 6 years. And now going close to, 6 years. And I've never had a single one stay defensive. Never. There's not a snake in the garage. There's not a retic in the garage because I have a demon of a gelatin carpet python who wants my blood every time. But and I also have an import Biak green tree python that is just out for my face every time. But I
can think of 2 examples of like retics that. No, Joe's Joker is he's manageable. He's manageable for sure. But Richard definitely has one though.
I think that's what Alex is trying to avoid is like having a manageable retic. Like we want it to be a little bit more than manageable.
Well, actually I talked to Joe. That's along the process of talking to the guy that, sold me Apollo. Mm-hmm. And he actually, I'm assuming it's the same snake. He actually mentioned Joker.
Must have been.
Because he said that snake would be out and be fine. And then just whatever reason would just turn around and go, it's time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then when he tries to get away, he does that spastic thing that we're talking about, and that was not fun. Right after a back surgery, trying to deal with him. So
I have some Pimboras. I have one of my female Sri Lankan pythons. The moment you get her out, it's this one, and it's not casual. It is stressful. I think I gain a white hair every single time. She's never struck at me, never bit. She's never done any of that. But the moment that you pick her up, she's going to take you for a ride.
Wait, was I bald when I had Joker?
Hold on. So you
This might be a real reason.
so you owned Joker for a while?
No, he was used in my first breeding in
load.
2020. I think it was 2020, 2021. The eggs hatched.
Yeah. Nathan used him as a male that he bred.
It was while Joe was out in Korea.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm tracking now. Okay.
Joe, as sweet as Joe is like, hey, I have a great male for you.
Hey, beautiful babies, and some of no, they were a little nippy, but they weren't too bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say you got bit in the head by one, or in the arm.
No, still have avoided any face bites, but there may be a close call that I had a week or two ago. That was my fault.
So let me kind of recap so far. Like you were told like handling every day, right? Which in my opinion, no, not me. Like I don't think that that's a good thing, and I'll explain why here in a bit.
Yeah.
You tried the leave the door open, see if it comes out, see if it doesn't come out, and then trying to go from there. And I'm curious, how long of an effort did you give that?
I do it every day.
Just opening the door?
I just leave it open. And he makes no effort. He makes zero effort for that at all.
Interesting. Okay.
I still do it even when my wife's here. She's like, aren't you afraid? Like, I'll go to the bathroom. And she's like, aren't you afraid that he's going to crawl out? And I was like, maybe I'm taking advantage of this. I don't think he will. And if he does, good for him. Because finally,
I'll find him. He'll come up.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. He's big enough. I'll find him.
Is that area of the house heavily trafficked? Like, is your presence in there that's pretty
actually,
often?
I actually have never asked that. Good question.
So it is and it's not.
Okay.
It's not heavily trafficked, I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
It's the basement, so my wife and little girl are upstairs. But my dogs and I are down here all the time.
Okay.
So it's not like he goes long periods without seeing people.
People are going to think I'm crazy by asking this. How can you, how loud are the footsteps right above?
They can be. I mean, yeah, they can be loud.
Okay. I'm wondering because they pick up on vibrations and those sounds and everything pretty intensely. At least I'm imagining just the way that their sensory experience works. So I don't know if like the doom, 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 right? Just like kind of echoing down into the basement might contribute at all. But at the end of the day, like we're also humans that live lives and we cannot cater a snake to be on as much as I would love to, we can't just like put a snake on a pedestal and just like rearrange our house to completely the snake needs to learn within our confines of comfortability, right?
Yeah, there was so much. There was a lot of advice I think that was being thrown out a lot. I'd asked a lot of people, and that was kind of the advice that I have was like, don't just ask me, ask others as well. So I asked you, Abby, Gary Tarpley. I asked guys that were in the V unit chat that I was in, or that I still am in. Dylan, D's Balls and Exotics, Shane Silva. I think he owns a few retics. I'd asked like all kinds of people, and everybody had a different variation of something that had worked for them. Mm-hmm. And I got to a point where I'd almost got too much information in my search for a solution. I think I caused myself a bigger problem and a lot more anxiety.
Oh, that's a thing.
Than simplifying it. I kind of went freak out mode and was like, I don't know what to do. And honestly, most of the advice that I was getting is almost kind of polar opposite. It was either handle a lot or don't.
Yeah.
But the funny part was about all of it is what finally I think has broken him. Mm-hmm. Don't. Just don't.
Yeah.
Leave the door open. Do whatever I do. And his behavior has not really changed as far as like he's still freezing up.
Yeah.
But to get him out is much easier.
Right, exactly. And that's a very, very, very good start. I explained this a little bit. Maybe it was on Patreon, maybe it was in direct message with you, but here is my philosophy on retic behavior in terms of like working with a defensive animal. Retics, more so than a lot of other pythons, they remember. They remember bad experiences. And they hold on to those bad experiences and they'll use them against you. And so for me, when it comes to working with a difficult animal who's defensive, right? It's going to strike, going to do whatever, is to minimize and actually try to eliminate negative interactions. Negative interactions are defined by an animal that's striking at you, you getting bit,
Getting flighty.
getting flighty, right? Like if an animal is doing this on you, don't put that animal back into the enclosure until it's settled down, because it is experiencing. So in my retic is thinking they're getting drug out of their enclosure, they're flailing and trying to get away, and then you let them go back away. That retic is getting back into the enclosure, and it's like, oof, thank goodness, right? We don't want the snake's final memory of that, like, oh, I got away, right?
That was part of my issue with the Annery when she was starting to get some size on her. When I was first getting into him, I did that a few times, and she kind of realized that, just retreat into my enclosure, run away from him, and he's not going to get me out. So
right.
A little bit of that was just me getting over me.
Right, exactly. And so minimizing negative interactions is really important, and trying to eliminate them. And so I want to give you an example of how I built a relationship with this wild-caught Calotoa I have in my garage. She's if anybody comes over to my garage and they want to hold a sizable animal, like an animal that, like, for the common person who doesn't know much about snakes, wants to hold a big snake, right? She's about, 12. Yeah, she's about 14 plus years old from the time that she was imported. So she's an adult Calotoa. She's probably about 10 foot now. And when I first got her, she was defensive. She was flighty. When I held her, she was just constantly running through my hands and kind of doing this a little bit, but not like really intensely. Food drive was through the roof because the previous owner was just slamming her with food. So she thought every interaction was a food interaction. And then when I tried to get her out, she would turn around on me, and I hated it. I hated it. But now if anybody comes over and they want to hold a sizable animal, she's the one I pull out. So this was an animal that I got when she was probably 10 years old, 10 plus years old, and already a sizable animal, 9.5 feet, probably at the time, 9 feet, and didn't want anything to do with me. I'd only been keeping retics for about 1.5 years. I started taking her out of the enclosure by giving her a small meal. She would bite, she would wrap, I would pick up her coil, I would stick her in a tub and close the lid. I'd clean up her enclosure, I'd give her fresh water, and then I'd have a second smaller meal ready for her. I'd open up that tub, I would give it to her, she would bite it, she would wrap it, I would pick her up, and I'd put her back into the enclosure. As I started noticing her behavior change, this is what I started observing. I started observing her, like when I would walk by, she wasn't slamming the glass for food anymore. When I would walk by, she wasn't coiling back and like kind of in a defensive posture. So what I started doing after that was I would start spot cleaning. Like if I noticed that she was on the right side of the cage and the left side of the cage was dirty, I would open it up, I'd tap her, and I'd turn off that food response, and I would keep that hook kind of on her, and I would spot clean around her, and then I would replace bedding, and then I would close the door, and that was it. If I needed to take her out for a full cage enclosure during that time, I was still offering her a small meal, picking up her coil, putting her in. And really eventually through time, I decided one day, like maybe after like 2-3 months of doing this, I decided I'm going to try and take her out. And she was a completely different snake. Now, I'm not saying she was still like what she is now, but just through time, I've learned what makes her comfortable. She's learned my repetition. And I think one of the most important things when it comes to animal behavior is they have to have a sense of predictability of what you are going to do. So if every time you are approaching that enclosure and you're doing something different, the snake is getting nervous. So I'm not a very like I'm not a very like just organized person. I'll just say that. I'm not an organized person. Like I don't have a lot of method to a lot of the things that I do. I forget a lot of things, whatever the case may be. But when it comes to like how I approach a snake enclosure, it's the same way every time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different for each animal. So that's important. Like I think they pick up on differences and nuances and why our body language and why our stress levels are so important when we approach that cage. But the more consistent that we can be, I think the better off that we are.
Yeah, they appreciate a routine more than any other animal I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would completely agree with that. As we've kind of gotten into a routine here, just as of recent,
Mm-hmm.
I have noticed that a lot of it, and I internalize probably a lot of this as well, but a lot of it has just been how I'm approaching him. Me not realizing his fear is getting eat, being destroyed, killed, however you want to put that.
Right.
Self-realization of going back and going, maybe use the snake hook less, because just holding him with the snake hook, letting him calm down, now it's just touching him with it and then grabbing him. And that's much better. I feel safe. It's not, I'm going to freak out because I'm on a snake hook now.
Okay, cool.
And going through those motions just as of recent, like letting him have, as you had said, giving him the time to like decompress and just see me and not interact with me, has led to more positive interactions with my own self probably development, and saying, maybe you need to change this up. Maybe this is a you thing. So now he expects it, and I do this. It's even within just the last couple of weeks. It's trying to do the same thing every single time, and I get the same reaction every single time from him. It's no more crazy flying out. There's still some defensive behavior. He'll still kind of back up from me a little bit, but it's much different. Now,
there's going to be retics for their whole life where they don't want to leave their enclosure and they're going to try to escape and try to run out. But that doesn't make them a bad pet, because once they're out, they're generally good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I have snakes all the time. Like I tap them, I go to grab their coil, and they're running away from me. They're latching onto the logs in their enclosure. They're latching onto their water bowl. Their water bowl spills everywhere. Because at the end of the day, they feel comfortable in there, right? And so
yeah, I'd say that Annery is still the same way. Like she'll huff, puff, she'll buck the hook a little bit when she's first.
Yeah, she's like, leave me alone, right?
Yeah, getting woken up, I guess. But
right,
she's predictable once you get hands on her, and it's all in the approach.
My favorite retics are the very vocal ones, the one that have the deep huff and puffs. I think it's adorable.
Yeah, it's fun to show off for sure. It's like, especially when there's new people in the room, like, watch, this is my biggest girl. She's totally cool, but she's going to give some attitude when I go in there.
Right. But yeah, I mean, so some retics are, so here's the thing. And here's what I want to like really just kind of, so we can fantasize, and we may be lucky enough if we keep enough retics, right? And again, this is where I'm lucky because I've kept quite a few retics. we'll come across the animal that is that quintessential retic that you see, that you can open up the enclosure and it pokes its head out, long tongue flicks, comes right to you. You're able to hold, and it's this beautiful love story, right? It's like this snake who wants to be held, right? That's my male Slayer, who's actually with Chris McVicker right now. So I'm hoping that when he comes back to me, he'll still be that beautiful, sweet angel. But that's and also with my Philippine, right? My male Philippine Phil, he's the same way.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
Biggest puppy dog retic out there. You open up the enclosure, you give him a little tap, he comes right out. He's upset. He was the only big snake that didn't get a meal tonight because I didn't thaw one out for him. I forgot. But I want to kind of like get people to realize that like you can still have an amazing relationship with an animal who's not like constantly trying to come and seek your attention, right? Like some retics will, but I think it's a much smaller percentage versus the retics that generally speaking are like, I'm going to tolerate you. And then when I'm out, it'll be a fun experience for the two of us. But like getting that snake out might take some work. They might want to like wrap that log, wrap the water bowl. They might not want to come out. And that's where a lot of the behavioralistic approaches of like choice-based handling come into play, where like people are very strict and like, no, if the animal's not choosing to come out, don't ever take it out. And it's like, I'm sorry, I got a lot of snakes. I breed animals, not realistic.
They pee too much to have an option. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. But that doesn't mean that you will have a bad relationship if you don't have that like fairy tale, like just that perfect, like what you see a lot of like those
Ed Tuaka's videos.
Ed's videos, yeah. Right? Like again, those two retics had the most beautiful relationship with these young girls that are now grown. I saw a video recently he posted. His girls are getting so big. Yeah, you know, we all want that. And some retics are very capable of it, but it's a smaller percentage. It sounds like Athena's one of those animals that's just like super chill.
Yeah, I mean, she could be out all day. She would sleep on my shoulders if she could, just like so. Nothing bothers her. And I think like what you said, as far as like the quintessential retic, I think that's what I thought the species was.
Right.
You know,
right.
So like I kind of related it into the Patreon chat it's a lot like being a father. Like this is not what I thought it was. It's still great. Sometimes it sucks, but it's like, it's rewarding. It's working out. And I've accepted the fact that maybe you just don't like to come out. Right. Maybe you just want to do your own thing, and that's cool. And I'll respect your boundaries. And I think a lot of our problem was I was trying to force him into a box.
Yeah,
that he didn't belong in.
I remember I remember telling you at one point. I think that we were DMing on Instagram and everything, and I said, I think you're doing too much.
Probably.
And you know, because sometimes I think we have the like we can just like being a father, right? You were comparing it to being a father. It's possible that you love something a little too much.
Yeah.
And that's what you were wanting with the snake. It's just like you wanted that good experience. And like, sometimes I've done it myself. We just do too much.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And looking back on it now, for sure I was.
Yeah.
I can 110% say that a lot of the bad experience that I had, that I was saying, what's going on with you? A lot of it was I was just forcing him into some kind of category that he didn't belong in.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't accept the fact that you are an animal with your own personality that I am just not doing for you the way that you need.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not giving you your space. It has taught me a lot of patience as someone who is not very patient. He and fatherhood both have taught me a lot of patience.
They'll test it.
Yeah, sure.
And Nathan, that word patience has come up so much throughout the last 2.5, almost 3 years of this podcast of, these snakes will teach you patience. There's I don't know. There's not a lot of successful keepers out there that are impatient with their retics because they teach you it eventually.
Oh yeah. I think anytime I've come into like getting bit, my least favorite thing. It's always been when there's some impatience involved. Well, no, one was just me being dumb and
Is that when
bobbing
you got
up and
bit on
down
the
in
head?
front of it. No, that was when I got bit in the shoulder and it ended up on that MTV
Oh
show.
yeah, I thought. See, for some reason, I keep thinking you got bit in the head, but I guess it's the shoulder.
No.
What MTV show did you end up on?
Ridiculousness, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They put me on underreactions, but I had my tiger out, who regrettably right now, yep, she has switched her focus from her rabbit to me recording the podcast, so I'm going to have to finagle a way to get that rabbit later. But when
She's
she was
such a
smaller,
problem child.
she is. Oh my Lord. I had her on a coat rack while I was doing an Instagram live and was bobbing up and down while cleaning her enclosure, and just totally forgot she was behind me, and she just tested the waters and wanted to see what was dangling right in front of her face. So yeah, just a quick kiss to the shoulder.
He's only got me good one time, and it was my fault. I guess towards the beginning of the growth spurt. And I just told myself, I was like, man, we're just going to have to get this out of the way. Like, we're just going to have to do this. And I look back on this now and I'm like, that was dumb. And I just allowed him to do it and just take it and then move on. It didn't help. I mean, it didn't help me. I was like, well, that didn't feel good. And he was still just like,
My feelings would have been hurt more than my hand.
yeah. And he was just like, you want me to do it again? Like,
it's like, I got another right here.
yeah, you want me to do it again? You want to see me do it again? I look back on that now and I'm like, no, that wasn't. You should have just let it happen organically.
Yeah. A lot of people tell me, like, just take the bite. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to avoid it at all costs. And again, it goes back to that philosophy. It's like, I'm minimizing negative interaction.
Yeah.
My second and third one also came from impatience, Lucas. It was a Zoom meeting during the pandemic where I was trying to pull that same tiger out to show off, and she gave me my first food response. And then can you think of the other one? It was on camera during TRL. The impatience on trying to get my Anery golden child out of Phil's enclosure during our...
Yeah, that's the one that I was thinking about earlier.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, again, they will teach you patience. They'll teach you to be humble. They'll
also teach you to trust your instincts and how you approach retics. So I was like, I was told, hey, she's good to go. Just grab her. No,
Phil, no, she was not good to go. As a matter of fact. So, and then, man, something was on the tip of my tongue and it kind of faded.
Sorry, so I guess I'll claim responsibility on that one.
No, that's okay. I'm trying to think of where that thought was going.
Was it patience? Something about patience?
Yeah, I mean, it was patience. It was also just kind of the idea of like minimizing negative interactions. It was about setting. So in the conversation of not minimizing or like completely expelling the idea of negative interactions is, I like what Abby is saying, like longer handling sessions, especially if you let the snake explore. That's a really good way to desensitize a lot of sensory information. But if you're noticing that like you're holding the animal and it's been only 5-10 minutes, but the animal is just like cruising through your hands curiously, long tongue flicks, and it's going well, put that snake back into the enclosure. And then you wipe your hands and you say, that snake left your possession back in the enclosure with a positive experience. You very rarely want to put a snake back into its enclosure, or a retic, I should say, after a negative interaction.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was it, I think.
Yeah. I've tried to minimize all those, and I had taken in so much information that I knew what to do, but I don't think I applied it all at the same time. So I was applying this here and this here. So he would have a freak out moment in one of his spastic moments, and I was like, nope, we're just gonna have to ride this out. Like, we are just gonna have to figure it out. And then he would eventually calm down, put him back, and I'd be like, I don't really know if that's what we would consider a positive interaction or not. And then we would have really good days where he would come out, it would be good. He'd be just kind of cruising, exploring things. And then, I would go to put him back. And as soon as he would hit that enclosure, like as soon as his head would hit it, gone. Like he went from being super chill to when he had that opportunity, he was out. He's like, I see home base and I am gone.
Yeah.
And it's honestly been hard to read. The improvement, looking at it now, it's more, I've wanted him like vast improvement, going back off patience. I've wanted vast improvement, and it's just been more baby steps. And I've just not taken the realization of it is getting better. You're just not giving it time,
Right. Yeah, I think time is definitely something that needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
We definitely want to rush things and want to play a big role into trying to get these animals sooner than later out of that stage. But the reality of it is we're on their time.
Yeah, absolutely. I've kind of always felt like being a new retic owner and growing with them, that I'm on the clock. Like, I'm on the clock. You're getting bigger every day. And then someday you're going to be, 7, 9, 10 feet. And what's going to happen when we're there? Is this going to be the same thing? That bite that I took, that's going to hurt a lot worse. So I think it's been, my internal too. Just trying to figure it out instead of just smoothly going about it and letting it happen organically. Sorry, he just hit the glass for whatever reason.
He did.
Yeah, for whatever reason. I guess he's had enough of me talking about him.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, he's like, give me some credit, Dad.
Yeah. No, he's been awesome lately. Even just like our last interaction, I can honestly say that that's probably been the best one that we've had. But it was also one that I even noticed myself that I was less nervous with too. Like, just getting him out.
Yeah.
Just the repetition, getting the reps in for both of us has been helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's only it's only a matter of time until you understand his specific individual behavior. Because that's one thing that, like, I will never, ever, ever, like, it's such a cliche thing to say, like, each snake is their own individual. But man, when it comes to retics, that's freaking true as hell.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's not a single retic in my garage that I approach the same way or handle the same way. And that's a lot of animals. I mean, maybe with
I was going to say that's a testament with the number you have over there.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe with the babies, like the hatchling rack, like, I don't care.
Yeah, they're all pretty similar, I think.
Yeah.
Clutch to clutch.
But like the moment that each of them hit 2.5, 3 years old, there's not a single animal I'm approaching the enclosure the same way. I mean, there's some snakes where I open up their enclosure on the side that they're on. There's some snakes where I intentionally go on the other side because I know the food response is so intense. There's some snakes where I tap and then I can grab their body. There's other snakes where I have to hook them out to me. There's other snakes that sometimes during specific time of the year, I have to guide them out to go into a tub because they're on such a crazy food response mode that I'm not touching them. Like I'm not taking them out of their enclosure. Those are typically females that are building follicles. So yeah, I mean, every individual snake retic specifically is very different. I'll say with my bull snakes right now, maybe it's because I don't have a lot of experience with them, but I go in and I pick both of them up and they typically do the same thing.
I had the opportunity when I was younger, when I was in college, I had the opportunity to work for a wildlife sanctuary. And I worked for a wildlife sanctuary for a couple of years just for some extra money. And they had all kinds of different animals, hawks, falcons, bald eagles. Relatively, some of them were, some of the animals that I dealt with were fairly dangerous. I going through all of this with him, even as small as he is now, I think he's only about 4 foot now. Going through this with him, I was like, why are you beating me? Like, what is it that they weren't doing that you are? Like, why are you beating me?
Right.
Why are you beating me up so bad? And I think that's what I appreciate them about the most now, is that they are all just so unique.
Yeah.
And hearing different experiences with people saying, like, they were absolutely horrible. Now they're great. Like, my kids play with them now.
Yeah.
You know?
And you want to know what's funny is if this snake was not like this over at Reach Out Reptiles, and I say this not in a negative way at all because I'm in the same boat, but when you have a lot of babies, you're feeding a lot of animals, you're cleaning a lot of animals, you're minimally interacting and having these like joyful handling experience with these animals because you got a lot of overhead and a lot of things that you got to be doing. And so it sounds like if that animal was never like that before, like maybe the key is like less interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. I have nothing negative to say about them.
No, they're great.
At all.
They are. I mean, we can thank Garrett and Reach Out Reptiles and Joe what they're doing for a lot of the popularity and a lot of the things that they're doing. They've done great education, for the species in general. And Joe does a great job with just communicating with people.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I would not be sitting here talking to you guys had it not been for Reach Out having the, no pun intended, reach out that they did on YouTube with me, and they kind of fit into that algorithm. And
Garrett would feel so good hearing you say that because like that's his whole brand and logo. Like that's literally the what is it? The cross, the bridge between worlds, or what's the slogan?
Yeah, I think it's bridge between. Yeah, I think it's bridge between worlds.
Yeah, yeah. He'd be like, yeah, it's working.
Oh. Yeah, dude, it worked on me. And then, I'm a few months into it and dealing with issues, and I was like, what was I doing? Like, get off YouTube, dude. Right. What are you doing? But I'm honestly so glad now. There's been moments where I was like, there's a chance that I would have to give my dream snake up. There's a chance that I might do that. But I look at it now, and I don't think that way at all. I think that he'll probably be with me until he or I goes, one of the two. Because we're just gonna figure it out.
Or maybe you'll do the whole like retic versus like Malaysian cobra, and you'll both go out like at the same time.
That would be awesome.
Nathan's face.
I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I was talking to a client the other day about his Thailand, Indonesia trip, and I was thinking of that picture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, Alex, you got anything else that you want to touch on?
No, I am extremely, extremely grateful for everybody who's taken the time to help me. There is not enough money that I owe everybody. I think I've said that multiple times. Abby, you, Gary, FaceTime Gary. He was honestly, and this is no disrespect to anybody else, but he was honestly one of the most helpful. Just because he has a couple snakes that weren't the stereotype, that weren't, the most well behaved, and I thought to myself, oh man, like it doesn't have to be like storybook fairy tales. Like, it doesn't have to be all that.
Yeah.
And getting to see him interact with them on that level was extremely helpful. I'm extremely grateful for all the people on Patreon. And honestly, if this has to happen for my love to grow for the retic, for the reticulated python, then I'm cool with that. I'm glad it's been difficult, for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of learning that happens with the difficult animals. You become a better keeper when you have a little problem child. And one last thing that I will say, there are going to be some animals that their personality is just not the animal that wants to come out. I would encourage the pet keepers, for the retic pet keepers. Those are the animals that you want to give the big, elaborate, beautiful enclosure so that you could just like naturally look and observe them in this naturalistic environment and still love and appreciate them, knowing that you're going to take the animal out less than some of the other ones, but you're still going to be able to see it in a beautiful enclosure and just like shining with that iridescence, basking, doing all the behavior stuff that like that we fall in love with these animals for it, like at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So Alex, if you don't mind, I know that you just opened up an Instagram page. Can you go ahead and just kind of share your plug where people can reach out to you or they can start following your journey? You should start a vlog that says a day in the life of a snake that hates me. And start a little vlog channel on your Instagram and just post videos of like, well, I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, it's honestly it's so silly now. I kind of looked at it, I was telling my wife, I was like, this snake's like 4 foot. And there are guys that are in this like Patreon that have like snakes that are like 12 feet, 13 feet, and they hate them. And like, that's not a big deal to them. But no, I'm on Instagram, Carr Reptiles. I also have a TikTok too. That's fairly new. I just got to get some.
Is that
content.
Apollo right there?
That's him. Yeah.
He's chilling.
That was a good day for him.
That's a sweet snake right there.
That was
a long tongue flick.
That was a really good day for him, actually. Yeah, he can be.
You can see him freeze up even a little bit there, and like he'll come out of his shell and then
he snaps
start crawling up. Yeah, right there.
Yeah. See, and you did exactly what you should have. You desensitized him. You kind of like snapped him back to reality, and he started moving around.
Yeah.
That little finger scratch at the neck was huge. So again, it's those little things that we don't realize what we do that helps them with feeling more comfortable.
Yeah, I would love to tell you that in that moment I knew what I was doing. I did not. Talking about desensitizing him to kind of the touch or whatever.
Yeah.
I think I just wanted him to move, you know?
Yeah.
No, exactly, because it makes us feel uncomfortable. And if we're uncomfortable, it's because we're picking up on their behavior change. So right now, if you're looking, he's frozen. You're noticing it and you're like, I don't like this.
Even that little wrist movement where it kind of forces him to move is just as effective sometimes.
Yeah. And so you were like, nope, he's frozen. And you just kind of gave him a little scratch and he started moving around a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's grown a little bit since then. I can't remember how long ago that's been. At least a couple.
Yeah. It says 3 weeks or so.
People are gonna laugh at me, but that's about the size of the snake that I don't want to take a bite from anymore.
Really?
Yeah, I don't, dude. I hate being bit, man.
Yeah. It certainly didn't feel good when I took it. I was like, this is dumb. Why did I do that?
Yeah, no, I don't like being bit, man. I avoid it at all costs. And maybe that's why I say like, hey, positive interactions only, because I'm a wimp and don't want to be bit, but I stand by it.
Like, I expect it's going to happen again. I just don't need to put myself there.
You want to know what's crazy?
Go for
all the
it.
Snakes, all the retics that I've kept and bred and I've sold and moved out, it's probably up in like the 300s, 400s maybe. I've never owned a golden child, and it makes me sad.
Yeah, she is. I've always loved the golden child. Like when I saw the morph I was like, they are beautiful, beautiful. So when Joe sent that one to me, I honestly was questioning my sanity at that point because I was like, why would I get another one?
Right.
What's wrong with me? I was like, but I need one that is like enjoys interaction. So when he sent her to me,
Right.
I was like, this snake is an angel.
Yeah. Is Garrett now sending people freaking pamphlets with animals?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
It used to just be a card, but that looks like
No,
a whole
no,
notebook.
he has a care guide.
Oh my gosh! What a
So
gosh! The
that
guy
was
is just killing it.
that was a part of the negotiation for her. I wanted a T-shirt, but I guess they didn't have any T-shirts. He's like, "What about a book signed by Garrett?" And I was like, "You know what?
Oh,
That'll
that's
work."
that's the care guide. Okay, good for him. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a care guide that's going to be posted on my website. Which, by the way, people have been waiting for my website to launch for months now. I just need to get some animals up there listed. But yeah, I have a care guide that's probably a little too long winded. But maybe I can find a fancy way to make it into a booklet. But yeah, Alex, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's been a pleasure. I'm glad that you were able to talk about your experience, what worked, what hasn't worked.
Well, and these
and
are things that any new retic keeper are bound to run into at some point or some form of this. So I think bringing it to light and talking about it more is invaluable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I wish that there, had I known back then, I wish that there would have been a conversation that somebody would have sent me like this. So I would have known more what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's okay. The experience is good.
Right.
But yeah, thank you guys so much. And thankful that you're able to put up with my ADHD thoughts everywhere. I feel like I was going into a thought and then I would go somewhere else.
No, this was a great, I mean, and objectively speaking, this was a great interview. I'm going to be very upfront. I think this is probably one of the best episodes that we have for newcomers for the industry.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really happy with the way all of this transpired. Unplanned, unscripted, no questions, no nothing, just good snake conversation about retic behavior.
Yeah, man. You all do awesome. I really, really enjoy the podcast, and I'm glad that this one went well.
Yeah.
I was honestly kind of nervous because I was like, man, the ADHD may take hold. And
It's okay.
They may be like, why did we ask this guy to do this?
No, I mean, dude, once you start catching up on episodes and everything, you're going to be like, damn, no, look at his ADHD really shows like every episode. That was, I mean, me earlier, we literally had a 30-second pause where I was like, what was I going to say?
I was so fearful that was going to be me.
Yeah.
As I was preparing for this, like my wife is sitting over there and I'm like, what if I freeze up?
No. Send a link to your wife. Watch her watch you. You killed it tonight. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for your time tonight, Alex.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Nathan.
Absolutely. Take care.
See you guys.
Like you said, great one.
Yeah. Yeah. I just like, once I saw, I was saying this at the beginning. I had got on to our Discord this morning. I had saw another Patreon member reply to one of his issues he was having with the behaviors or like saying something, and it just sprung on me. I was like, this would make a really good episode. And I'm glad it did. I think
you did. I was very surprised how quick you were able to pivot this morning with stuff being thrown at us.
We were gonna throw out a book club episode, but because I had to record in a short notice time, I got my brother coming into town who's going to be occupying the bed. I didn't want to rush a chapter of the complete Reticulated Python, and it was during a meeting where I was just texting you back, and I was like, "Wait, I think I have an idea." And Alex was able to be flexible, and it worked out.
All right. Well, I guess we'll plan for book club next week.
Yep, book club next week. I'll start reading earlier, and we'll get through and see if we do 1 chapter, 2 chapter. But it should be a good one.
All right. Well, until the next time, everyone. If you want this kind of access, this kind of support from the community, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Retic Lounge. But we'll see you next time.